All right, gather round, because this one's going to stick with you. We're diving deep into the shadows, into the places where the veil between worlds thins. Tonight, it's about a place known only as the stairwell that leads nowhere. Now, most folks write off ghost stories as just that, stories. But there are places, real places, where the air itself hums with a different kind of energy. Places where the past isn't just history, it's present. The Blackwood Asylum. Even the name sends a chill down your spine, right? It was built back in the late 1800s, a sprawling Gothic monstrosity perched on a wind-swept hill overlooking the town of Silent Hollow. They say the land itself was cursed, an ancient burial ground disturbed by the foundations of that terrible place. Blackwood was meant to be a sanctuary, a haven for the mentally ill. Instead, it became a living hell. The treatments were barbaric ice baths, lobotomies, experimental drugs that turned patients into husks. The screams they echoed for miles carried on the wind. The asylum closed its doors in 1972, deemed unfit for human habitation. But it never truly emptied. The story started almost immediately after the last patient was dragged out. Locals whispered of shadows moving in the windows, of cold spots and disembodied voices. Most dismissed it as folklore, the product of overactive imaginations. But some couldn't ignore the pull. Like Sarah, a paranormal investigator, drawn to Blackwood like a moth to a flickering, dangerous flame. She'd heard the rumors, read the accounts, and she was determined to uncover the truth. Sarah wasn't your typical ghost hunter. She wasn't looking for cheap thrills or viral videos. She genuinely wanted to understand what lingered within those decaying walls. Armed with her equipment, EMF readers, thermal cameras, and a recorder, to capture any EVP, electronic voice phenomena, she ventured into Blackwood on a cold October night. The air inside was thick with the stench of decay and something else, something indescribably wrong. Dust motes danced in the beams of a flashlight, each one a tiny ghost in its own right. She moved cautiously, her footsteps echoing eerily in the vast, silent halls. She explored the abandoned patient rooms, each one a snapshot of a life lost to madness. She saw rusted restraints, stained mattresses, and the faint, lingering scent of despair. She felt watched, like unseen eyes were following her every move. Then she found it. The stairwell. It wasn't marked on any of the blueprints she'd studied. It wasn't mentioned in any of the historical records. It simply existed. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of the asylum, a narrow, winding staircase made of cold, grey stone. It led down. But where? Sarah hesitated. A primal instinct screamed at her to turn back, to flee this place of darkness. But her curiosity, her need to know, was stronger. She took a deep breath and began to descend. The air grew colder with each step. The silence became absolute, swallowing all sound. The only thing she could hear was the frantic pounding of her own heart. The stairwell seemed to go on forever, spiraling down into the bowels of the earth. The darkness pressed in on her, suffocating, until she could barely see her own hand in front of her face. And then she reached the bottom. There was no door, no room, just a solid stone wall. The stairwell led nowhere. She ran her hands along the cold, damp stone, searching for a seam, a hidden passage. Nothing. It was as if the stairwell had been deliberately built to trap anyone who dared to descend. Panic began to set in. She turned to climb back up, but then she saw it. Etched into the stone wall, barely visible in the dim light, were words, scrawled in what looked like dried blood. They're always watching. Sarah froze. A cold dread washed over her, paralyzing her with fear. She wasn't alone. Something was down there with her. She fumbled for her flashlight, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She swept the beam across the wall, searching for the source of the inscription. And then she saw them. Eyes, hundreds of eyes, staring at her from the darkness, reflected in the damp stone, shimmering like pools of black oil. They were everywhere, watching, waiting. Sarah screamed, a raw, primal scream of terror that echoed in the narrow confines of the stairwell. She turned and fled, scrambling back up the steps, desperate to escape the horrors that lurked below. She didn't stop running until she burst out of the asylum and into the cold night air. She never looked back. Sarah tried to tell people what she'd seen, what she'd experienced in the stairwell that leads nowhere. But no one believed her. They said she was imagining things, that the asylum had gotten to her. But she knew what she'd seen. She knew that something evil resided within those walls. Something ancient. Something hungry. To this day, the Blackwood Asylum stands abandoned on that windswept hill, a monument to madness and despair. The stairwell that leads nowhere remains, a silent testament to the horrors that lie hidden beneath the surface. And sometimes, on a quiet night, if you listen closely, you can still hear the screams echoing on the wind. You can still feel the eyes watching you, even when you're alone. So, what do you think? Did Sarah stumble upon something truly sinister? Or was it just the tricks of a disturbed mind in a haunted place? Maybe it's a place where the architecture itself is a trap. The stairwell that leads nowhere. A monument to lost souls and endless descent. What do you think lurks in the darkness? That's the real question, isn't it? If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling tales. And let me know in the comments, what's the creepiest place you've ever been? Maybe your story will be our next adventure. Sweet dreams, or maybe not.